I'll be introducing Amal. She'll be acting as a co-host in today's event and also translator for Vinal. Amal works as a recruiter based in Arizona, where she supports recent immigrants of her Yazidi community. Amal is originally from Syria and came to the US as a refugee. She uses her experience and passion to advocate for Yazidis and women's rights all over the world. In her free time, Amal loves to read and write. She is currently working on a novel and is working with Vinal to document her story in writing. So thank you, Amal, so much for being here. And I would love for you to take over.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm honored to be here today and be able to translate something so important and to help us understand today's story more deeply. We're going to begin with showing you all a short video that shares just a little bit more about the Yazidi people.
Have you ever heard of the Yazidi people? The Yazidis are among the world's oldest ethno-religious groups, and in 2014, ISIS launched a genocidal campaign against them. Yazidis are an ethno-religious minority primarily from northern Iraq with roots dating back more than 7,000 years. Yazidism is a monotheistic faith rooted in pre-Islamic and ancient Mesopotamian belief systems, incorporating elements from Zoroastrianism and regional traditions. Over time, their beliefs have often been misunderstood by outsiders, which has contributed to repeated persecution and erasure attempts throughout history. In 2014, ISIS declared the Yazidis as heretics. Unlike Christians or Jews, Yazidis were not considered people of the book and were given no protection under ISIS's interpretation of Islamic law. This designation gave ISIS ideological justification for mass murder, forced conversion, and slavery. On August 3, 2014, ISIS invaded the Sinjar region, the heart of the Yazidi homeland. In a matter of days, over 5,000 Yazidi men were executed. More than 6,000 women and children were abducted, many sold into sexual slavery, tortured, and trafficked across ISIS-controlled areas. Over 80 mass graves have since been uncovered. Thousands of Yazidis remain missing. The genocide didn't end when ISIS fell. Over 200,000 Yazidis remain displaced, living in refugee camps or unable to return to their ancestral homes. Thousands of Yazidi women and children who were enslaved remain missing, their whereabouts still unknown. Survivors continue to face trauma, loss, and the ongoing absence of justice. Entire communities are still searching for loved ones and struggling to rebuild. What can we do? We can listen, we can learn, and we can help ensure the Yazidi genocide is not forgotten.
Thanks all for watching. And now I have the honor of introducing our speaker today, Vinal. She's one of the most extraordinary and most resilient women that I know. Vinal has endured the unimaginable. And today she's bravely sharing her story with us publicly for the first time ever. I'll be translating as she speaks, and she'll begin by recounting the night that ISIS raided her village. Please join me in listening with open hearts. Vinal, whenever you're ready.
وكا عم تكون خلابون كنت مانا كلكي مسبو إيوا هكي انت 2017 السيمة هاشت عصا آثارخو وشاروانتها وكا قهاونا كنت كشبانا بشتي وكا بويسبا هشنا بويسبا goten go au go peden go que hena ma be kundishi kondewa pishtiwasi ko tinchan bundima hamish ishtekun pasta.
The night of a very special Yazidi holiday, probably our biggest one. They heard a lot of commotion and screaming from the village next door. They saw people running and saying, they're here, they're taking us. ISIS is here. At this point, they had raided, that was the third village. Once they heard this, they dropped everything and ran, just the clothes on their backs. No food, no clothes, no pictures, nothing from their homes. They began to run and were caught in transit to try to run away to safety.
Asudakako aliho kakushura koma bazda uma kachin kuntini bazda همچون بس على أساس أنتنا شوي بس أنتنا قاعدة شوي أمد مالك كده سكني وقعوج مالك أنا أصابو أمتي سكني كنت اشتغنينا وقلتنا عم تشتكي بيكينا كان داعمينا هونشن أمد وي مالي دستكني وبشتي أمشي بكي مالي دابون وجاتي هاتن قوانا ما هاتنا مالي وقا ماميت مي وبرايد مي وقا زلامي إد باما همشك جدا فتشاندن وبرنش كمان وجنون بجنش إيش مامون بشتي أوبلين نودع بلني تلقاني وأمجي هنبن. When they were captured, they took them all into a home nearby, and they promised them that they would not hurt them. And this is the ISIS members. They promised they wouldn't be hurt, to stay put, to not fight back. After that happened, the next day, they didn't let anybody leave. The next morning, there were vans and trucks and buses parked out front. At this time, they took all of the men. They took a couple of Vinal's brothers and other men that they knew that were in the village, and they took them all forcibly. And at this point, all the women were still left in this room. Amjinu upeju awit mine hame amti kostarake ambana malaka de tava nizungi iwe mari tisa then moga gale gittikapnu gale gitme mari dawa do chape sahata mari dawa bishti chape sahata costa ami وأمديستا كوستا بدنا تلح بدنا درس كده. They took all the women and children over to a home. They start a second home. This one was two-story. They were separating them at this point, some upstairs, some downstairs. No rhyme or reason at this point that they were aware of. And then those two sets of people, women and children, were separated. And at this point, Vinal and her mother and sisters were taken to madrasa, to a school. And at this point, they were all together still. وقتی هم بدینه وی مدرسیم گاندی وی مدرسی آتیشه گلک استید زبط کردم وقاعي جهدي دنا ونجي قالك بشيء جديد أقول أمجي بدنا ويدا ويعني بس أم مش كبيك ولا مشتي وناجي هويك شما وقاعدة تشتغل وناجي لك ما تشتغل وبشتي أمس يابا مشاوي مدرسة دقو وكا اسم زمان طياري جدا دولتي بس وقتا عزاني هكا أم دبيدي أنا قصف مولد. At this point in the school, there was no room for anybody. They were all still wearing the clothes on their backs. At this point, it had been, this is probably day 4. They'd been moved 3 times. There was no room for anybody even to lay down. No food was given. If they were lucky, sometimes bread. And there was no water given besides a little bit every day. استيعاب مشاعر قصفان كوستا ديك مازن أوني أم شان مشكلة كوستا كذا أم حاولان أم بدنا حبسي بسوادش. There was a plane circling the school, and so ISIS had realized that they were caught because this was global news at this point, and they were circling the area. Once they realized they had found where they might be holding people captive, they moved them once again, this time again on buses, this time after a few days to a jail where they would stay for 28 days. الواي حبسي ده بيشتين لأنه واي حبسي أم هشت حاجات دي دما وكا حالي وان يعني حالي ما تشون مشكا قالي فيسبوك ناجها كابوام تدبنا فنا جلك كابونا جلك كابونا تشتقنا وروجي جامعة سامونا بانيرك بعد سنة تشتغل الواحد سيدة جابي قدام كو كوي جنيد مازن وكوزا عشتني بكيد تحساني dans un stadium nasty.
At this point in the jail, they had let everybody know they were going to separate because it was women and children. They decided to take boys from about ages 10 to 12. And at this point, a lot of it was to take them separately and have them be brainwashed and be brought up as ISIS members as well, which left the women and young girls. At this point, no boys, even children, were left in the jail.
كان شوي حبسة كده عندنا مدرسة كشتلح بس نريل أنا ندرس من يكو عم مشتبست كده وكان بعدي ساكني يا ريتش جيلو بشني بغن وقتی ایگوی دورما وقتی دارم خواهیم درس سلام دادم سلام دادانی كنت بسكنة.
At this point, they were circled again, and they decided to take everybody to another school, a different one. At this point, they were only allowing everyone to enter one by one, and everyone noticed that they were pointing out young women to take separately. And as Vinal and her mother were entering, they pointed out Vinal to be one of the women that would be taken to a different area the next day.
واسي كوتيس وكا واسي هشك ببيت تشتكش منها ناس طيبين ناس بنجي خذ سكني يعني ظنها جيش استقصاء أو دقيقة اشتري مثل السلاح السليم داني هبالي كوتيكو كجيبا كو أواكتشكو بشوي بابا بشتي وشاغي هنا أسوداك أخو درباسوا أم درباسي ويبن بس وكا كلاقي شوشا شنيف ما كذا جدا كذا أم بيستو هشت بجاري مدرسة دا عايشين بس ما تلاقي خد من سالفة كذا تشتكي دنبو يوغدي مشكلة شوش دن جلقة يعني بس واسنة بس ما تلاقي خد بسالفة كذا مواسنة بستن وحتى يعني استر ماكي المدرسة دا أمن بستنا نن تيدا جوا بجهنا ونيزين غاز فستاني يعني الدنيا جامدة جوا بس ما تلاقي خد بسالفة كذا مواسنة بستن وخوارن جوا كم كم ودي سواسي عاش يسمونه كتان ما جابنا عافنا كذا كيشي بسحنا.
She's recounting how she felt when she realized she was pointed out to be taken away from her mother. At this point, her sisters were already taken away separately. So it was just her and her mother, and the thought of being separated from her only other family left. She said to this day, that's a feeling she'll never forget. And while they were in this jail, although she was pointed out, she said shortly after, another member told that ISIS member, she's too young, leave her here. And at this point, they stayed in this jail for about 28 days. And in that time, same thing. She said it was cold at this point. It's near winter. They're all on the ground. 2 months probably at this point, same clothes, on their backs from the day that they were taken. Food, again, a piece of bread if they were lucky. Sometimes there was no water, although it was cold, at least it brought some rain, and they would find holes where after rain they could grab water out of and drink out of.
بشتي 28 وجاءت ومدرسة دبا قلت نكون وطن كندركي هناك زلمي استي عندني كنتي وعائلي بانجي تفمنا بالي قومي واجب أنا بابا وقتي مش مدرسة تراني ديستا البابتي تساكن ديستا قيجوش نبتفن قدنا خوشكم عشمي يستر قد تبي ساكنة وفرق معمل وطبعا بزازة وجيمة أفكارنا يوم نبيش نيتي أمي تبا بس كنتم اشتبهوا هناكن أو إشباما بيض يعني قبل داني وان تستي ما قد كذا نهيلان أو ما ربنا.
I'll translate while she takes a moment. At this point, they had her sister-in-law was with them, who was pregnant, and they took her away. And she said they fought back as much as they could. They've never fought harder, but they couldn't win, and they took her other sister at this point, sister-in-law.
إشباما بيض أزوداكا خمان وخوشكما زوجي وسيزارت خمان وجمدرامي وجمامي نمان أمدرنامي كنديتي أو كندي إسلامي تيدا كندك اشتلحتا كودنما كوهارن يكشوا هذا كشوا معنا كده بعيش نشتري كنديدا أم شون ما نسأني أم شنكي ومالها يعني أو يتبادل ما بدينا كندي تجيبوا بالمعنى ما عرفنا ما أم شديدة ما نزعل شعرك كان مالك شيء ويدري أو هكذا زلام تبالي نقول وعدنا فما كنشي أمشي شون بهوان في مالا أو تيدا أم تيدا عيشي
At this point, they were moved one other time. This time moved to a house that had other Yazidis there. And at this point, they were more hopeful and thought that things would change. And because they brought Yazidis back together, that possibly this would be a better living situation. They stayed there for they allowed them to stay there for about 2 months at this point.
يعني إيش الدنيا جاكي خوش من نقلك يساعد أم اشتاقت نبستنغو بس بشتي بويسرستان جهة نبو تيدبان أو مالا أو يعني تيدد عايشين أو جيكالكم أو عايلكم نبو وعايلك هذه جهة نبو جهة نبو أم تيدبان هنا خانيت بيس تاعو شي دبون إدوا بيت غرادوان مشفعة بشون كذن وأم أزودا فخو وخوش فخو زوجي وغاسي زاوي وجمامي تخوامهم كتناوي ويوغافيدا.
They found a supply room at this point because they didn't have space in this home, but it was better than where they were before. They found a supply closet, were able to clean it out, and at this point they were reunited with other family members, and so it was about 6 of them at this point, women and children, because she had nieces and nephews at the time as well, in this small supply closet.
It was she يعني تشتغنابو ما بطانيك الإدوية مالي تشتغلتني ما بطانيك ما مشكل أخوك بطانيك ما مسافرك وفلسطين وأمشان مشكون وبدازي من كل دائما توي مالي دبو وقتي دوي مالي ده زكيتا أخذ وحتى يعني نجلكك هاون ليك أن تشتغل دافع مني كواسق كرهتانك جلكني ويان. At this point, when they were reunited with her sister-in-law who was pregnant, it was cold. They didn't have blankets, same clothes as always. She gave birth in this supply room, and her mom had her dress, and that's how she caught the baby. And her nephew was born in captivity in this supply closet. أم هناك بوي مالتكم وقوتنا ماكو أبي إسلام الدارنينا أمي إتشان مش كابا قوتنا ماكو لازم هم بين أم مثلا الجهة كده كمان يا باس بين ما مش كاب شوي دليل أم دعوة مشتيت هي بيا باسا وهيك شو قدام كنا بتشيا ونابي من نبيسي بشتي واسي ميزاني هكاوي مجيش داكا مقدكم بشتي باس فاتي يعني هنشكي أساسا من كاي أسغابا مسا داكا مسعدا كذا تاسي باسي كذا بشتي أسب باسي كذا دفعني ميسيري كبالش فكر أتاني كي أمو أسنان دينا أويكم ديتي مدامنا كم داكيتي مدامنا مالكا كتشكتا. At this point, they let them know that they would no longer allow everybody to be together, that the next day they would be separated. They asked for a man walked up to Vinal, a member of ISIS, and he asked her what her name was. She gave it, and she knew that she was put on the list with other young women to be taken the next day. She recounts not being able to get on the bus. She said she couldn't, she felt paralyzed. Her feet could not move. Her mother had to help her. At this point, she's 14 years old. Her mother had to hold her up and get her in this bus. And they got on, and once she realized on this bus what might be happening, because they'd be separated at the next stop, she was wearing two shirts, two layers. She takes a layer off on the bus, and at this point they arrive to the next facility. شو موصلين أوي مالك أسجون أزل مقاسكي قام مشفق وهم قصان ما هناك طاني أو أبوتشي خودا ما جلك خو كهم ما بدلاندن هناك بيس لبساندن وبشتي إيه محاولان دينوي مالي اللي فشان همش قال المتقارعة بس أسناس نكرا. After they got off the bus to the next facility, the first thing she did was go and find scissors. She cut off all of her hair. The facility was very dirty. There was ash, mud all over the place. She begins to cover her face with ash, her body with ash. She found some old clothes that she believes were probably soiled in. They were very dirty clothes, but at least they weren't the clothes that she was wearing when that man identified her and asked for her name to be on the list to be taken. After this change of clothes, and she'd cut her hair and has darkened her face and body with ash. She saw the ISIS members go through the crowd again. She knew they were looking for her. It was the same man who pointed her out, but they could not recognize her. بشتيام هم حولاندي والمقر مسنديتم كود جهي وهم مشكاري مالك جكتنين كو هكي شو هرمي مالك شبان دا بنفن وستبهي أمي وبن سوريا أم شوني مالدا بشتين شوني مالدا دبكاك جدي وكالعبك مدستي فكر يارس نفسات إنا هو وهاتاني كيسبهي هتا بسرعة دهي سبهي نا آبدوي مالي دابا مخارم هكو ما نزاني أم تلش بيركتني يكشي تشوكو ديكو كوتشو أو أمن بمالي دهيلانا ونخارم هنا آخرنا وزارك ما مشكل نا قديني مغانكت كو خبيشا كوتشو ما كل ما هنا دي تنبان مش بيركتنا كل ما يتشان هنو ومتني ماما كوكي قامي Então, Bilal and this we continue at this point, she was left with that initial group. They moved them into another home and promised them that the next day they would be taken back to closer to where they were captured to at least be near their old village. At this point, they had taken the young women, they had taken the boys 10 to 12, they had taken all the men, so mostly women and children. And at this time, Vinal found a toy in the facility. She had grabbed it. It was similar to like a teddy bear. She held that teddy bear close and she tried to act as if she was younger and maybe even mentally unstable. So she changed her mannerisms, anything to make them not want to take her if they happened to eventually recognize her. They were left in this home for a day and forgotten about, and in fact not taken back to be closer to their village and for this day there was no food or water at all. And then the next day, they told them they had forgotten that they were all left in that room. يعني شوي بوجيتا أصحابك تنبيهم باكتك بس أنا نبيفتم وكان أصناكم وهي كمان تشتكي ومن بس بيتم بكيرا بقى عندنا ويكون ديسا ديسا شون أمارا مشتي أني نمسا شون باوا أم ديسا ويدير عايشين جامنا قوانينه ناني هشك دوي مالي تتقوني هذا بيوكا زيدا وان ماي وواسي هشك كلي ميابدن حيوان بيهزوان ما تشوش وما خوار هذا يعني تشتغنبو جامنا آفنبو هكبار عن هذا ما تشو اشتيكو لك يعني جهد كل هكا آف كدي ما تشو آف شوان تاني حتى يعني وصفان كندبو بس نبو يعني هيك لازم. At this point, she never spoke again for the rest of her time in captivity. She tended to be mute. She did not speak to anyone ever again. So people would speak to her. She would not answer. She was too scared to be seen as the young woman that they forgot to take with the others. The only person she would speak to was her mother, and even then, it was very, very rare circumstances that they were alone. They were held in this facility for a long time, and at this point, if they were lucky, they were eating old bread. A lot of times, they would take food that was meant for the ISIS members in the area for their animals, food for the goats and other animals. They would find what they could. They would try to clean it as much as they could, and that's what they would eat. And same with water, a lot of times forgotten about, not given water. And rainy days were one of the only ways they were able to capture and have water to drink. çıkmış bir tane. Muşan مثلا لول يعني مشان مشكلة كان عندنا السبقة كان السبقة عندنا القاعدة مرة القاعدة عندنا مشكلة في الدفاعش دي السواسية بدي السحارة مركز أفجر يعني أخوة بدل مشانش مشتري ويتشتري المشكلة يكون القاعدة هو ما شكل جامعة أو شجاع التطبيق أم بيستو عشت مجال القاعدة وقت المشكلة أسأل بيفتم نعم يعني أسأل نفس بيفا نفس أيكا يعني تصرفات نفس أيكا ديكو بشتي بيستو عشت حاجة كنت كوامي باني إيد زابا كوان بي إيد دوي وان بان إيجاك نبي ومش نفان. They spent 30 days there and were told that anyone that does not have children will be taken away and separated once again. And at this time, not speaking at all, same clothes, all of them, same clothes, zero showers ever since they had been held captive. She did say in the next facility, they gave them food once a day. İşte iyi çağırmış kişinin devamı koduna hoş kama savcı şişe zavadıydı. Koduna mitaj işte fan. Koduna şumramışı bavakilevu koduna mitaj fan. Arşnif بدن يعني تشتي بالزحمة هذا البيش شعبي سلامة أصلا كيش سلامة وحتى يعني من كارينا ناس بكري ناس ببيلة ناس دفاعي وكانت تشتكي بس واسيزا سكني يعني هكا سبايب بام هكا تشتك ويمشي بان. At this point, they took the rest of the family that they were once reunited with. And that's one of the toughest things she remembers as well is having them been taken away and not being able to react because she had to keep up the appearance that she wasn't aware. She was mute. She didn't know what was going on. She was younger and did not understand what was happening. So unable to cry or scream or feel what she was actually feeling while her family was once again, the family that they did have was taken away. And how did that once again, just her and her mother left at this point. أوش باما بلين بساعتك هادن قدن أميفاني إدماسن ودين إلواسي أمي شنفن قدن داكامي كومي قيشة داشيبا داكامي كس قبولنا كامي بفن حكاوني بكيدا فن مشي بفن بس نعلم أو تنبيه أشبه قدن داكامي كو ممكن تجي بيها قالك بود كويبان مش كمان كوي كوشن بس الوي دقيقة دا يعني مقونا داعي مقود هكا كوشتن جيبي غمني بس شوان خلاص بس مشوان خلاص من إشبال هكا هاد دقيقة كا أم تستيوان دا مش زحمة تات مش يعني مقود عادي قامينا هكا كوشتن جيبي مدفين كانشن. At this point, they let them know that they are going to take anyone that was not healthy, mentally stable, and they were going to take them elsewhere. Her mother did not allow that. She fought and said, I'm going to come with my daughter. They said, you can come too. They were told by others that, do you realize they're taking them to be killed? And she says that people ask her all the time, were you not afraid that you would be killed? And
And at that point, she said they would have welcomed it over what they were going through. And her mother would rather be together, rather be killed than to live another minute in captivity.
Posterek mazin ani متكن أزد على جانبي يعني قصدا مثل أزد على جانبا يا أس هكمي مثلا حكتي فري تشتك أصلا هكوي ما بنكي تري أصلا أم كذن يعني أجيكا كامل بشيفوان أم ديمد ماشين هاتانكي أم وصدن بوشي هاتانكي أم أم جاكي ساكنين لوحة أخويا ومديني لوحة تبيسي وكربوك مهيدا كتدا وقوم آني نكربوك أم كنت أم واصلين أم مداني أم برنا مالك بشكوه أمودي كذا كنت ما قومي بشي بي مالي تبان ومي استبا بشتي بوي استبا هاكيش ما تسكيتك وشربتك نانيتي وكو ديسة تبان بين آني وكو أمي وبن أمي ودنا بيش مرقا أم برنا وكا ساحة كيبو بتشغل شي كتوثن آلك شي بيش مرقا آلك شي أبون بدي أم بتشن أم مكهاندنيك وطلقة تقاندن قوتن الله أكبر وطلقة تقاندن بشتي ويشا كل هابنا بابيش مرقا أويدان.
They were moved a few more times. At this point, they were held captive for close to 6 months. And after moving them 3 more times, they were brought to an area that the Kurdish Peshmerga soldiers were. They were on one side, the ISIS members were on the other. She's unsure if it was a trade-off or how this happened, but at this point, ISIS members shot their rifles in the air, said a few words, and allowed them to be rescued by the Peshmerga soldiers. And this is where they were rescued and brought in to survive.
بشتي ويشا أم كهانا بيش مرقا تغيبا ساعتكي نهيلان أو كا دابفانكرن أم بكنا بغان مش بعرف أم كلاسن جيش آنين وتشتو أم هم فتشاند وأم ندر بسكرن وان يعني راسنا أم خلاص أجدك أخو بس يعني ميزاني هكا مكتنا أمانتا أم مشوان خلاص هنا بس أم در كيف مش بر هكا عايلي مهمة بالدستوان دما بس مسيري وان تشتكي جينيسان بس أزدك أخو تني خلاص نفس هكا أمن مريبون يعني خوشي هك مندي أم بشتم قاندينا وان جيان بدنا قاعة كما زندا وشي لأن دي قاعدة ودولا مسبه برنا لارش
And so to conclude her story, she said they survived, but feels like at what cost at this point. Her and her mother had survived. Everyone else was still missing. They waited 6 months. One of their sisters was also rescued. And then 2 to 3 years after that, another sister was rescued. But until today, her 2 brothers are still missing and they don't know anything about where they are or what happened to them. So I want to thank Vinal for her courage and for sharing her story with us today. But at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Kelly to monitor the chat and guide us through the Q&A.
Thank you, Amal. Thank you, Vinal. Yeah, I would like to echo what you said first, Amal. Um, Thank you, Vinal, for sharing that with us, sharing your story. It's an honor to be here with you and the first time that you're sharing it publicly. You have shown all of us a lot of respect for allowing us to listen. So thank you. Thank you for that.